Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. My guest today is Sam Anderson, Mr.preneur, a serial entrepreneur and president of Enzo Media, and an expert in marketing. Today, we're going to be talking about the struggles of being an entrepreneur. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing well. So, the question I always ask every guest that comes on the show is, what is it that makes you unique? Tell me your story. How did you get to where you are?
So I'll try to condense this as much as possible because it's an interesting story. So I'll start back in my college days. I went to Longwood University, and by the junior level, I decided to drop out of college. Back then, I know now you can major in entrepreneurship, but back then, entrepreneurship was a cuss word on the college campus. So all the loans were in my name. I said, you know what, instead of going further in debt and knowing this isn't going to lead me to where ultimately I want to be, I rolled out. Greatest thing I got from college was the relationships, bar none. So from there, kind of fell into the mental health field. My first job out of college was working at the Boys and Girls Club for like $7.25 an hour. So it was a lot of Little Caesars pizza and PB&J in those days. And I just continued to work my way up in the field. I've always said, I may not be the best looking, I may not be the most educated, but nobody's going to outwork me. And that's exactly what I did. Things eventually got to the point where state regulations came down and said, we don't care how many years of experience you have. If you don't have a degree, you can't work with this population anymore. So for the first time in my adult life, I had no idea how I was going to generate an income. The writing on the wall at my last job, I actually got a job as a project manager, and 2 years into that, I saw they were about to let me go. Went to dust off my resume, and I said, you know what? Always wanted to start a business. If not now, then when? So started my first company. It was Richmond Bubble Soccer. You put on these huge bubble suits to play full contact soccer. We had that business for about 7 years.
I have to interrupt because it's one of my favorite things. We go to the Sharks games here in the Bay Area, and they do bubble soccer on ice.
Yep, we did that.
So it's just crazy.
It was a blast. It eventually got to the point that business served its purpose for me in terms of just helping me get my name out, because for the longest time I was a bubble soccer guy. But people started learning about who I am and what I did. So for me, it was just a catalyst for my entrepreneur journey. 3 months after that, I started a valet laundry service called Cycle. Our clients literally just dumped the dirty laundry outside the doorstep. We picked it up, brought it back to them in 48 hours. So in the midst of all this, I'm still working full time. And I end up going into my boss's office.
You're the bubble soccer guy, and you're the Cycle laundry guy, and you're working full time.
Yep. This is before kids and wife and all that stuff.
Well, of course. Yeah.
I worked 24/7. And I walked into my boss's office one day and I said, you know what? You can't afford me anymore, which was a lie because I didn't have any savings. I didn't have a 401k. I didn't have anything. But I said, I'm going to make this thing work. So in the midst of that, I started what is my main business now, Enzo Media firm, because I was in need of marketing services and I couldn't find anybody that could provide them to me at an affordable rate and at the quality that I wanted. It was either like, local studios charging 16 grand for a video, or somebody on Facebook is like, hey, my cousin Tim got a camera for Christmas. He can shoot a video for $50. So since there wasn't something in the marketplace, I just went out and built it. I had no understanding of this field in terms of marketing, video, any of that stuff. So I found the guys who could do it. They didn't want to own their own business. I said, I'll bring you all the business you can handle. I'll deal with contracts. I'll deal with paperwork. Just show up, do what you love to do, and we'll move on from there. So I continued to grow and expand that business. And right now we have about 10, 11 employees here in our Richmond office, and we have an office down in Virginia Beach with about 5. And sales are accelerating big time in the last 2 years. Outside of that, I started 2 brands last year. legacy vending, which we've actually just recently made a pivot to that. Vending machines, but we had each vending machine sponsored by a for-profit company, which basically took care of my upfront costs for the machine. And then secondly, they select a nonprofit that they want to support, and 10% of that revenue goes to a nonprofit. Now we've actually made a pivot, and we're actually helping people get their vending machine business started. So there are 3 different packages we have to help people get their vending business started. I started Warren Investment, which I actually named after my father. It was his goal and dream to be able to leave us with real estate. Before he passed, he wasn't able to do that in the fashion that he wanted. So that's me just going out and investing, creating a legacy there. And then my last brand is Entrepreneurial. So I created that brand to kind of house everything that I do. But I'm an international speaker and also do one-on-one coaching with entrepreneurs. Outside of that, you can see in my background, I'm a big sneakerhead. I'm a golfer.
Yeah.
And been married for almost 6 years now and have 2 kids that are 3 and 2.
Yeah. So let's talk about work-life balance. As an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
I don't know, how do you do all the stuff that you do?
Number one, there's a team behind me.
Okay.
Everybody thinks it's just me. There are other people behind the scenes. But work-life balance to me, is a myth. If you're an entrepreneur, it's never going to be level. It's not like when you work a job, you clock out at 5 o'clock. The last thing you're thinking about is work. When you get home as an entrepreneur, this doesn't stop working. So when the kids and the wife go to bed, I'm still up researching things, educating myself, getting proposals together, whatever it is I need to do. But I've always said, like, in terms of balance, I don't believe there's any such thing. But your businesses and your personal relationships, your home life are going to require different things at different times. So we go through these seasons where, like, right now I'm in a huge growth season. So there are a few nights this week that I won't be home in my normal time. And it's a conversation me and my wife have to have. But to make up for that, like, the whole family, actually, I think we're going where you're at. We're going to be down in South Carolina this weekend, taking a little family trip. So you just find ways to kind of even it out, but it'll never be balanced. One side of your life is always going to require more attention than the other.
Yeah. It is not an even balance, no, for sure. But it is, but you do need to find a way to handle the priorities of each part of your life.
Absolutely.
Right. And it sounds like you've done that pretty effectively. And my thing, even when I was working corporate, right, I didn't clock out at 5 o'clock, right? I clocked in at 5:30 in the morning and I clocked out, usually 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, kind of, right? And there was some weekend work and there was some travel in there and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I did for my employees, I role modeled what we called work-life balance, because I left at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Because Friday night was family night, and they all knew that. So you have to give the right amount of priority to each of the parts of your life that are important to you.
And a lot of that just comes down to scheduling. Like, each night, one of the last things I do before I go to bed is I map out my day. Like, everything's already on my calendar, but I put everything on my calendar. Like, my wife knows if I need to be somewhere or she wants me to do something, if it's not on my calendar, it's not getting done. But to go through and strategically plan out and see where the gaps in my day are so that I can utilize my time most efficiently. Because if you don't direct your calendar is going to direct you. And then you turn around at the end of the day and realize that you were just busy the whole day and you didn't really get much work done.
That's right. It's one of the questions that I ask often my clients and people, I do when I speak, right? One of the keynotes is, are you productive or just busy? And you can be incredibly busy and not get the things done that you need to get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your marketing business and how important is effective marketing in your view? You said you couldn't find anybody to do it for you, so you hired some people to do it. How does that work?
Yeah. So with marketing, all the companies I've started up to this point, there were some that I left off the list in my intro, but that I'm no longer affiliated with. But everything that I've started has started with social media marketing.
Mm.
I haven't had to do like TV ads, or I have had billboards before, but I didn't pay for them because I don't see them as effective as they once used to be. But the more I look at social media as an entrepreneur, there's one purpose. I need as many people as humanly possible to know who I am and what I do. That's the goal. So I post, most people would say like a crazy amount. Bare minimum, I'm normally posting on my platforms at least twice a day, because the way the algorithms work, like I may post today, but somebody may not see it for another 2 weeks. So if I'm constantly stacking up that content, anytime they get on their Facebook, their LinkedIn, their Instagram, whatever it is, they're seeing me, whether it's with my vending machine business or Mrpreneur or Enzo, whatever it is. So, and a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, just aren't taking advantage of what's in front of us. 100 years ago, if you started a business, it was not this easy. And I'm not saying entrepreneurship is easy, but it's easier than it used to be in terms of informing people who you are and what you do. Social media is 100% free. You don't have to pay. I don't regularly run ads or anything like that. I get organic reach, and that's how we continually grow these businesses. So I think for a lot of people, they need to wake up and realize, yeah, you may not thoroughly enjoy doing it, but I believe it's a necessity to grow a business in 2024. It's just a piece that you got to have there, because at the end of the day, and majority of the content I put out isn't even sales. I abide by the 80-20 rule. 80% of the content that we put out is going to be value driven, and 20% is going to be sales. Because when you scrolling through your news feed, if you get a sense that you're being sold to, you just keep scrolling. There are two reasons why you stop on a post. One, you're being educated, or two, you're being entertained. So if I'm not doing one of those two, I'm not going to get your attention. So majority of the content that we put out is going to be, value driven. Where the other 20% comes in is that if people are engaging with my value driven content, when it comes time for me to post something that's selling a service or product, more people are now going to see it because I got so much engagement on my previous post. So that's like the most simplistic way I can break down how social media marketing works. Now, when it comes to video marketing, it's a different beast. I do believe that video marketing is the number one way to reach people through social media and various different platforms. Even if you have a newsletter, I think you should be including some video content, because at the end of the day, people do business with people they like. If somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, I like that guy, and I was selling Hoover vacuum cleaners, somebody's going to buy a vacuum from me. I don't care if you already got one. If you like somebody, you want to find a way to support their business. So I tend to lead with a lot of content that allows people to get to know me. When I first started, I literally vlogged 5 days a week for 12 months, because the term entrepreneur has become very sexy, where people are like, oh, be your own boss and make your own hours and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people don't know what that really entails. Entrepreneurs, we give up working 40 hours a week for somebody else so we can work 80 hours a week for ourselves. So I wanted people to see what that actually was. So I just recorded 5 days a week throughout my entire day between the various businesses, would upload content. And for years, people have just been following my journey and my story. And now a lot of that business is coming in from people that saw me or met me years ago. And it's because, one, I've stayed consistent with it, and two, I didn't quit. Like, really, those two things will get you a long way in your business.
Yeah. So it is most of the content. Yeah, I get the 80-20 thing, and that makes total sense. Is most of the content that you're posting original with you, or are you posting other people's valuable content, or how do you balance that, the creation of your own content? Because I know a lot of people, they're not creative perhaps as you are. Is it okay to post some stuff that other people, like magazine articles or other blogs that you found interesting?
Oh, for sure. And it also depends on your platform. So I'm testing, and I'm always testing and changing things up, because if you keep doing the stuff that you were doing 3 years ago, you're not going to get those same results today. So on Facebook, a lot of I would say half of my content may be content from other people, where it's like quotes or some funny meme or something like that to get the engagement up. But if it's primarily video content, things like that, it's something I'm shooting and producing myself. When you look at like Instagram, a fair amount of the stuff that I put on my storyline is other people's content. If I find it interesting, I find it funny or educational, I'll just share it to my storyline. Now, I do share things throughout my day, like when I go to the gym in the morning, I'll get some shots of me working out, or if we're having a cool meeting or I'm out to lunch with a client, I may take a shot of my plate or something like that. All that goes to my storyline. My post, I tend to keep that all original content. I'm not too big on, and I know TikTok's one of the major platforms where, like, if you do a duet and kind of remix somebody else's video, that can get you a lot of play. There are a lot of platforms where you can have a faceless account where it has absolutely nothing to do with you, and you can have hundreds of thousands of people following an account and they have no idea who's behind it. So it really determines what's your passion, what are you excited about, and who your audience is. That will ultimately determine the platforms that you need to be utilizing.
So one of the questions that I always have for, what's the biggest struggle that you had as an entrepreneur?
Whew. Let's put an S on that.
Okay.
Struggles. I will give you the story of my first major struggle. So I quit my job. This is back in 2014. By the way, this was the best job I ever had. Like, I had never had a job where I had vacation time and like health benefits and all these other perks.
And you quit to go work for less money, twice the work.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was probably 3 months after I quit my job, and I had Bubble Soccer, the laundry business, and Enzo was then Anderson Consulting. I hadn't rebranded, and things were getting tight. Like, this was before home ownership. I was living in an apartment with one of my best friends. Things were getting tight, and we were coming up to that date where they said, you know what? We don't care if you got 99.9% of the money. If you're a penny short, we're kicking you out and taking you to court. So that earlier that week, I went to my roommate and I said, hey, man, I ain't got it. I'm not going back to get a job. I know this is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to put an ad on Craigslist. I'll have a roommate in here for you in the next week or so. But here's my game plan. I'm going to sleep in my car. Good sized vehicle. Seats go down in the back. Plenty of space for me to stretch out and sleep. I can afford to keep my $10 gym membership, so I have a place to shower. And then I hit up a couple of friends all on different parts of town, and I'd leave some clothes at each one of their houses. Like, hey, man, is it cool if I snatch a couple suits over here? So if I have a meeting on this side of town, I can drop by your house, change clothes, keep it going. So I'd made plans to do all this. And the day my rent check was due, like the final day, I get a random, and I'm just walking around the complex, just literally praying, like, God, I know this is the right thing to do, but like, I don't know what to do in this situation. So it's 1 o'clock. I get a random phone call, and the guy says, hey, Mr. Anderson, you may not remember me, but you gave my company a quote a few months ago. We weren't ready to do business with you then. We're ready now. Who do we write the check to? And I said, bro, wherever you're at, do not move. Don't put that check in the mail. I'm coming to get it right now.
And my rent's due.
Yeah, the rent is due. And don't you know, it was more than enough that I needed to cover my rent. And from that moment on, things just took off. And I don't want to make it sound like it was a straight arrow up. Like, there are ups and downs, just like the stock market or real estate, but it kept going up. And at that moment, I realized that was God testing me. That was the universe saying, I know you said you want to be an entrepreneur, but are you really willing to do what it takes to be an entrepreneur? And when I made that decision to sleep in my vehicle, I think that was God saying, okay, you passed the test. Let's go. So that was probably the biggest struggle for me when I first got started. And there were various ones throughout the years. Like, there have been times where, couldn't cover payroll for my staff. And it was like, okay, got to figure it out, whether that's selling some stuff, whether that's not paying myself to make sure that my staff is taken care of. Like, it's a difficult thing to deal with. Having to live on a credit card for a month just to make sure we get back on track. Difficult clients, like that first difficult client you get will run you through the ringer, but the lessons you will get as a business owner, invaluable. The moment I realized, you know what, if I don't like somebody, I can fire them as a client. Most empowering thing ever.
It really is. We had a conversation about that in one of my networking groups. How do you fire a client? And
real easy.
Yeah, you could do it, right? And you should do it. If the client, look, it's an opportunity cost at the very least. Absolutely. You could be doing something else. Yes, I know it's a loss of income, but at what cost?
Exactly. There are two things I got out of that. One, it empowered me and helped me realize, big reason why I left my job, not only because I could see the writing on the wall, but like there were a lot of people in that office I did not like. Like we just didn't get along. We were just different personalities. We didn't do anything bad to each other, but it was just like, you ever met somebody and you're just like, yeah, I don't like that guy. Like they didn't do anything to you. You just get a bad vibe about them. And I vowed to myself after that, you know what? I'm never going to work with somebody else again that I don't enjoy their company. Like it's just not a life that I want to live. So that, and two, this was a very scary lesson to learn because you mentioned like the loss of revenue there. The first client I fired, I needed that money. I needed it bad, but I needed my sanity more. But what I found is that when you get rid of the stuff in your business and or your life for that matter, that you don't really enjoy, that's causing a lot of turmoil, something better immediately comes in right after that. It was almost immediately after I fired that client, another one came through that was paying me double what they were paying, and they were just an extreme joy to work with. Like no drama. I tell my team here, like we'll get emails or phone calls like later in the evening. I tell them, don't answer the phone. I've never heard of anybody dying from not getting a video in their inbox. They'll be all right in the morning when we get back in the office. But it's such I think every entrepreneur should experience it because it's just such a rewarding experience. I'm not saying actively go out and try to find a client to fire, but when you're in that situation, it empowers you and helps you realize like, hey, I really am in control of my future and how I want this thing to look.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know I'm going to jump topics a little bit here. I know you have a podcast, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the Entrepreneurial podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that. What is the purpose of that? How do you use it in your business? And who are guests?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna drop some gems here. So people listening, get your notepads out. About to give you some game. All right. So number one, the podcast is called You Can't Afford Me. Like I told you in my previous story, that's what I went in my boss's office and told him. So I've kind of run with that theme. Had the podcast now for about a year and a half. We're on season 2. I really just like to focus on other entrepreneurs, people that are grinding, hustling, and making things happen. But I don't like the fluff. I'm not a fluff guy. I like to get into actionable steps, things that people can walk away with and say, I can implement that into my business now and make a change. The other piece, this is the gem I'm going to drop for you. Depending on how you structure a podcast, it is something that has helped me close business. So I'll give you an example. So let's say there's this big company I'm trying to do a deal with. We've sent them proposal. We've sent them contract. We've all had this happen where the client just disappears and ghosts you. So I use my podcast as a tool, and I'll reach out to that person. They haven't responded to my last few emails, and I'll say, hey, I was thinking the other day, you have a very interesting background, and I think you could add a lot of value to the people that follow me. Love to have you as a guest on my podcast and kind of brag about you and have you share your story and hopefully help some other entrepreneurs on their journey. Almost immediately get that response back. Oh, yeah. People have this pearl clutching moment when you invite them on a podcast. It's like, me? You sure? Okay, yeah. It's like if you were at a dinner party and you ran into an author, a published author, you're gonna be excited. Like you're gonna go home and talk about that. And I feel like that's kind of how people feel about podcasting. And 9 times out of 10, now not every guest I bring on there, I'm trying to close a deal with. Some people are just interesting and I just want to get their story out there. But what often happens with that particular person that I have in mind, as soon as we cut the mics, one of the first things out their mouth is, man, that was awesome. Oh, yeah, by the way, I know you sent me contract or proposal. Yeah, let's get that done. Let's get that wrapped up. Like they immediately feel like I've added so much value to them and their brand that the first thought in their head is, okay, how can I help this guy? How can I repay him? Oh, yeah, he was looking to do business with my company. Let me go ahead and sign off on that. So it's really helped my close rate. Like a lot of podcasts, I'll do current clients that I have to kind of strengthen that relationship and say, hey, if you're spending money with my business, I want to promote you even more. So it can be a great tool for that. The other piece, I want to leave people with this gem. Roughly, there are about 7.7 billion people on this earth. There are only 1.1 million podcasts that have ever been started. Now, everybody thinks everybody and their grandma has a podcast. Not true. Everybody and their grandma starts a podcast, but everybody and their grandma doesn't consistently stick with the podcast. So if you do anything for a month or two, you're not going to see any results. Active podcasts that are now in the world, and active meaning that at least one episode is being updated each month, there are only 300,000 worldwide. So you start breaking that down into genres. Let's say you're a beekeeper, right? Bees are your passion. You may think other people don't find it interesting. I guarantee you there are hundreds of thousands of other people that are just as excited about that topic as you are. But now you start getting into these genres, you may be one of only 5 podcasts in the entire world that's talking about this subject matter. So I kind of equated to where we were with Instagram when Instagram first got started. So imagine if you had posted every single day to Instagram the day it dropped. Your platform would be huge. That's where we are with podcasting right now. So I'm, the bar is set at just uploading 1 episode a month. I typically try to do between 6 to 8 episodes a month because even if there's somebody speaking on the exact same topic I am, if I'm churning out more content than them, my numbers are eventually going to surpass theirs. So podcasting is a phenomenal space. It's a great way to kind of filter in some clients to promote the current clients that you have. And the other cool piece with it too, it doesn't need to be something about your business. So we have, I have a realtor who's signing up for a podcast. We do podcast production. I have a realtor who's signing up to do her podcast. And the whole thing is just her and her best friend drinking beer, which we got them. One of our clients owns a brewery. So they're sponsoring the podcast and giving them free 6-packs every time they do an episode, just making sure we get the cans on camera. And they're just talking shop about real estate and not like you hear other realtors talking. It's like, oh, you wouldn't believe this client I had, or let me tell you about this home inspection where like a raccoon came flying out of a chimney. Like they're talking about all the stuff that unless you're in that profession, you're never going to hear. So that's a little bit more tightly wound to what they do. But we had a insurance guy. He's a white, tall, redheaded dude, and he's married to a Hispanic lady. And he has 2 friends that are both white guys, and they're married to Hispanics as well. And the podcast that they're starting is just about being a white guy married to a Hispanic woman. It's nothing to do with insurance. But if you're laughing at that podcast, you're becoming engaged, and he's dropping in his ads for his insurance company. When you look to switch your insurance, you're gonna be like, oh, what about that guy on the podcast who keeps me rolling every single week? If I gotta have insurance, why not do it with him? People do business with people they like. So you're just trying to get out content, and podcasting is a great platform for that, because I can't tell you how many times I hear from somebody, oh, Sam, I know I need to do video, but I need to drop 20 pounds before I'm ready to do video, right? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And if you're that self-conscious about having your face on camera, then do a podcast. Nobody's going to see you.
That's right. I mean, and people can't tell what I look like below the, below the shoulders.
Yeah, below here, I got a 6-pack, man. I got an 8-pack.
Yeah. I got a 6-pack too. Just mine's insulated. Hey, Sam, it's been great talking with you. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, you can go to my website, themrpreneur.com. If you search on any social media platform, Mrpreneur spelled Preneur, you'll find me there. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the major platforms.
Great. And that concludes our show. Thanks to my guest, Sam Anderson, Mr. Preneur and president of Enzo Media. I hope you learned something about the struggles of being an entrepreneur. I know I did. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.